Okay, guys, I think we can start. Welcome to another Android Tech Talk session. Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, who wants to start today?
I don't mind if you guys have some. I think I'm top left, right? I can start if you guys want.
Sure.
So yeah, so I'm working with like solving a couple of issues that we had with Televisa, and now with the Family 3, the new Chagres family, and also now with the Family 2. And currently at the moment, maybe you guys can help me out with this. There is an issue in which there is this transparent bar that I know you, Tarek, were working on that, and finally, you didn't have the time to work on that. Now the question is how. One of the requirements they're asking is like the transparent bar should be only in certain screens and not in every screen, because sometimes it happens that you have a, like, not talking the transparent but the content like being pushed up, if the bar is transparent, because it could happen that you have like a list, for example, which have the actions on top of the cell, so it will get overlap between the nav and the list item itself. And at the moment there is no way to and as I say, like I was telling them, like, look, we should not hard code per screen, typical for screen, like if we should move things or not. It should come from UI builder, but maybe you guys can come up with something that it could help out with that. So I know this issue has been lingering for a long time, and just not sure, 100% sure which solution finally to take here.
I can give you some background, Javier. Yeah. Like the transparent bar was added by your team by a guy who like another Pablo, not Pablo, but there was another Pablo who was part of your team. And he added that, and I approved his pull request. But then this created a regression for my team. And then by that time, this guy had left the company, and nobody was interested in fixing that, like fixing the regression and keeping the transparent bar. So this is why the transparent bar was just reverted. And like you may be interested in going back in time and check what exactly happened and what the regression was.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that after this was reverted, it was taken over by Elad Ben David, and I know that he fixed the regression so that you could still have I think it was like the navigation bar with colors or with an image, something like that was broken, right?
I don't remember, frankly.
Okay, well, I think we need to talk to Elad Ben David, because I think the regression was fixed.
Sorry, Javi, continue.
No, that's all I was saying. And then what you're talking about is a different. It's more like I don't know. It's an extra task that was never done by Pablo or by Elad. I think this is what you're asking is right. It should either come from the UI builder, or there should be just a set of rules of which screens get the content pushed under the nav or not.
Yeah, exactly. So Atanas, for you to see, there is actually, if you look, you guys look at the class, the top bar overlay, there is this logic to be able to understand if they should overlay the top bar or not. So it's already in the code. So I guess that regression, as Javi is saying, it was fixed, and or at least supposedly. And yeah, so what I was asking is more not so much the logic of making transparent or not transparent, but actually if we should push the content below, like behind or not for certain screens, and how we should differentiate that, if it should come from UI builder or we should hard code it in the family, or because, for example, one way I thought is like, okay, depending on the type of content, if it's a general content or if it's not a general content, push the low, but it's really complicated to do it in the client, and we're hard coding logic in the client, which in my opinion should come from like somewhere else in the backend, but I don't know if any had any good input on this. Otherwise, I can chat with Ran and you, Javi, and we can figure it out. So,
I would suggest also linking up with Roi and seeing what they are doing in iOS, how they're solving this issue in iOS, because from what I understand, they have this done. So
I think from what I remember, they had some way to tell that if you're in the home screen, then don't do this. But again, that's hiding logic in the client side because it's not straight that you should know that when you set a transparent bar, on the home screen is gonna be the content is gonna be pushed below, and it's not. There is no proper way to see that except if you know about it and you actually see it in the code. So
Javier, I think the way they did it, the way that we intended to do it in Android, which is not a good way, is like to have it all the time come behind the nav bar. But if you don't want a specific screen, you want a specific screen like to display regularly, you just add a top padding.
Yeah.
And then it should but I don't think it's a hack. I think it could do the job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then Javi and I will double check with Roy and the iOS team to see how they did it, and then also we can maybe bring this with Ran and see how we can find this, because I know Laura is pushing a lot for this, and I know this issue has been lingering for a while, and then I'll update you guys with that as well. So. And that's from my side, I think. So
there's one more product consideration. Like if you have screens with transparent bars and screens without transparent bars, how do you transition between them? So like if, for example, you have a screen, you have a menu, you open a screen with a transparent bar, and then you open another screen which doesn't have a transparent bar, and then you open a screen with a transparent bar. These things need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, the transitions. That's I think a different topic, but I mean in the sense that it's related. Yeah, of course. Athenas, thanks for the heads up. Definitely something to take into consideration. So yeah, so that's pretty much from my side what I've been working with. And and then Tarek, as I say, you already see it. So I pushed a new dev SDK today with a fix for a small regression, and so something related with locals, there was not defined, and for a specific conversion of numbers, and that's pretty much it. So it should be already in that in the latest dev. So, and that's from my side.
Okay, I can go next if you guys want.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to update you guys on the issue that I spoke about last time I attended. I know I've missed a few Tech Talks, but last time I attended a Tech Talk, I was speaking to you guys about the conflicts we had with Exoplayer and our Uyala plugin. I guess we pressured Uyala enough for them to update to match the Exoplayer we have in our generic as part of the Exomedia dependency we have. So that should be solved now until we decide to update. Obviously, if we update any of those dependencies, it'll break again, but this is an issue that I guess we'll have reoccurring for a while, and then we'll keep following the same basic rules that we have, which whoever's behind is responsible to update to catch up. So besides that,
quick question, Javi. Why do we have hard-coded that dependency on the generic app, and it's not just another plugin?
So I had been thinking the same, and from what I understand, this is only used as an audio player dependency, and this is mainly apps like Dan Patrick that use this dependency. I believe it should be a plugin, just like the rest of our players, and then we wouldn't have this problem. But last time I spoke to Ran, I think he said it's a core feature of our, of our apps, the ability to play audio. But I don't think we necessarily need to use Exomedia for this. I don't know. It might be, maybe somebody that's implemented this could elaborate more on why it's in the generic, why it's a dependency of the generic. But I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, I think the best thing in the future would be to extract that out into some plugin, and whichever app is going to use a podcast, any type of audio playback, they could include it, but that's another issue entirely. Because we still have other conflicts besides that. Like Oyala still has a conflict with React Native because they're using a really old version, and whenever we add React Native to our apps, they're gonna conflict as well. So right now we're still using an old SDK. So there's multiple issues there with dependencies that I think in the end it's up to Oyala to really update all these things because they're using really, really old versions of both Exoplayer and React Native. So besides that, I had been working on some documentation and a sample app for the feed because our documentation, it was lacking compared to iOS. iOS has a sample project and a big README plus the documentation we have in our developer page in Applicaster. So I'm trying to mimic that. I'm almost done, and then I'm helping Jonah figure out an issue we have with the Achievement Center. So that's all I've been working on.
Okay, thanks. As for your question about why the Exoplayer dependency might be in the generic app rather than a separate plugin, I think that there was work that was done in the Israeli team by Elad Kariti at some point to actually integrate the Exoplayer. Tarek, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, correct. Elad, he was working on having the Exoplayer to be, the default player for multiple apps. Bellator is one of them, if I'm not mistaken, and the Can Audio also. So it is being used by Elad Kariti by multiple apps. So yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, the idea behind that was that Exoplayer was adopted by Google, or it was bought by Google. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was created by Google, and it should be the default player, and we should not use
to replace the standard media player. We would simply use the library, which is not a library; it's actually an official Google product. That's what was the initial thought behind that, but I don't know if it was ever completed. So.
I'm aware that he has a PR. He's had a PR that's just named Exoplayer, and I think that's what he was trying to do. And if that's the case, then I agree with it because I think the Exoplayer is a much more useful and a better player than the standard media player that we use. So I'm not opposed to that. But the problem is that it took me a really long time to debug this issue until Reuven suggested that I run a command that shows all the dependencies that might be hidden from us. So then that's when I found out that Exomedia uses Exoplayer because to me, I wasn't aware, I was just skimming through it. And then I'm like, okay, this is what's causing Oyala to crash because Exomedia imports Exoplayer version that I cannot see directly unless I run the command to see all the dependencies that it's pulling in. If we had Exoplayer as our base player, then that's fine. Then we could, that's much more obvious for a developer to be like, okay, I cannot integrate this new thing I want to do because they need to match our Exoplayer version. But at the time when I was debugging it, we didn't have an Exoplayer directly. It was some codependency of some other library,
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's interesting. It's interesting to see why this task was never completed. Maybe either Kariti encountered some issues, or it was just hanging there as a pull request that never saw light. I don't know.
I remember Kariti and Dror merged it. I remember they merged it already. It should be the default player wrapper as far as I know, unless they reverted it or whatever.
Okay, but neither of them is here, so we'll have to pick it up, unless Tarek knows, but I don't.
Yeah, but again, I want to emphasize that I do think it's a good idea to to utilize Exaplayer. It is something that is maintained by the Google team, and that's what I used in my previous job, and I think it's a good library, a good project to use to replace the media player.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Who else? Who's next? Thanks, Javier. Tarek, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, I don't have much to update. I'm working like on a specific projects. One of them is like dealing with the subscription bug, which is I'm trying to find another solution because we tested it yesterday and it did not solve all issues. And I'm also working on Reshit, which we are planning to release version in the next 2 days. So yeah, that's it. Like basically working on projects. Nothing interesting.
Okay. Who's next?
I guess I'll go next. Alex here.
Yeah.
I was working on adding a few formats for data parser and updating the date format representation. And I've come across quite a few issues, and I even posted something on our Android channel. It's regarding one of the static methods that we use, where we check if the app is built with the UI builder. Can you guys hear me okay? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Background noise, but we can hear you.
Yes, great. So at the moment, there is a method in a generic app that checks if we are using UI builder, but I need to use the same method in the SDK. The generic method calls for properties in SDK. So I was considering to move this method into SDK and keep it there, but we'll be needing, I guess, some approval from you guys, so we don't keep two methods, And I posted on Android channel, and somehow this conversation turned into the refactoring and more of a theoretical talk.
Yeah. But can you please repeat the motivation behind it? So if people did not follow the Android channel.
All right. The motivation behind it is that there is already a method in generic app, but I need to use this method in the SDK. Obviously, I don't want to reference the method in generic from SDK. So I'm going to create a new method in SDK, right? I think it's a good idea to keep one method in SDK.
But what was the method again?
It checks if, this method pretty much checks if we are using the UI builder for the app.
Okay.
The generic method also calls for SDK and checks for the property and app data. So, I mean, it makes more sense to keep this method in app data and let it be an SDK.
In that sense, yeah, if something has to be in the SDK, then it might as well be there and not in the generic app, because the dependency is from the generic app to the SDK and not the other way around. The question is, the only thing that I can think of is that generic app generally handles what is related to the UI, and the SDK is basically the core. But it's not really that way. It's not really maintained, this relationship between them. So I would prefer to see, that's my opinion, I would prefer to see this method. Well, there is a lot of background noise.
Can you repeat yourself?
Yeah, I was saying I would prefer to see such a method just in the generic app, but if it absolutely has to be in the SDK, then it might as well be in the SDK and not in the generic app.
The question is, who is in charge? I mean, which of those modules should be the charge understanding, like how we compose things in the backend through, for example, a UI builder? Is that the generic app or should it be the SDK?
Theoretically, none. It should have been a separate module, just like on iOS. Because, as you probably know, it's problematic to reference specific generic app versions from plugins. And plugins will need this flag as well, if it's UI Builder or not. For example, a root plugin will need the UI Builder flag as well. So theoretically, there should have been another level, up level. Up level, and then the generic would have been the code for building all the modular part. And then all the plugins and whatever could have much more easily referenced specific version of generic. But it's a bit... it's a question that is popping up every few months. Basically, every employee that is every new employee to the Zap team. So again, we come to conclusion that the SDKs in Zap should be not the generic version, but instead the app version, and all the templates should be at the app level and not in the generic. But anyway, it's a different discussion.
And so in the short term, how we can actually fix this if you need if it's in UI Builder or not, then I guess just add it in the SDK, because the plugins, they only reference the SDK, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it brings up the bigger question, like, are we gonna do something about it at all? Because yes, we're gonna fix it in the short term, then we're gonna keep more of the technical debt and keep like accumulating it. So, and I think that brings up bigger question. Are we gonna spend some time, or are we gonna talk about refactoring the code? Because, I mean, I know then iOS basis looks a little bit better than what we have in Android, and the date parser, for example, or date formatter, different methods, different classes. They use like like they do the same job, but they have like different code to do that. So there's a lot of old code, a lot of legacy code, and I mean, maybe we should see it and like have some time to talk about factoring, at least how we can approach it.
I'm still trying to understand what difference between iOS and Android we're specifically talking about.
I mean, the code base wise, as I understand, the iOS code is a little bit cleaner. I mean, it's not important in this context.
It is built differently. It has the generic structure, the SDK structure, and then there is a higher level for what? For defining the UI?
For the app, for example, the app level basically should be very clean. Rake scripts, okay, that are building the workspace, that and reference to a specific generic version. Okay, or something like that. Now, when you do this, basically you can put all the templates not inside the app like we have now, because it doesn't have versioning. You can put the templates inside the generic, or maybe create another level like on iOS. On iOS, you have another module that is called layouts, Zap layouts, whatever, something like that, that all the templates basically, well, not the templates, but the templates are in GitHub, but they have sales and whatever. All these things are defined in this module. But the point is that Zap should have reference to to up level so that plugins could use the generic or something. That's the point basically.
I see.
Yeah, I know what you mean actually, but so the question is, yeah, who should take this decision, like from overall architecture, because that's pretty much like I guess the discussion is about, right? So who should be in charge of not personally, but I mean, which module or which part of our code base should be in charge of understanding if UI Builder is UI Builder or not. So we can share that among plugins and things like that. And I guess who is taking who's been taking those decisions in the past? It's been a collective decision, or is actually someone taking a decision?
Technically, such decisions are taken on the Zap team level, but it has to be taken with consideration of what all the other regional Android developers think. So
yeah,
I don't know if it should be in the Android Tech Talk or we should have a separate.
I think the question was not which team will do it, but which module will be responsible for holding all the UI Builder bridging.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. So, and who should take the decision to make that decision? So,
no, this
I guess that's this.
This one is deep infrastructure. Should be Zap team.
Yeah.
I guess Ran. I don't know. Well, it was Ran taking these decisions for Android usually. Now I'm not familiar with the new dynamic because it was basically all alone there. But basically, Zap.
We should figure, have a discussion about this maybe another time. But there's a lot of things that, Javier has been pointing out that make a lot of sense to be refactored. But whenever he asks me, I have a hard time telling him if our team can make a decision to change core components like that. So I don't know. We need to see like what the chain of command is, how we can get these things started. Like theoretical level, we talk about it, we agree on it. Then how can we schedule and start making these changes?
Yeah, it's a known issue for architectural projects this way. We can take it with Udi in the developers talk that we have just in an hour or less than an hour from now.
Yeah.
We can raise it. I have no direct answer for this.
Well, I guess for my part of the question, I'll talk to Ran and we'll take it from there. Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. Moving on to Hani, maybe? Hani, are you there? Okay. Anna, how is it going for you?
Yeah, so last week I was working mostly on a Tappa and the article view. Yeah, everything looks okay. Apart from I have a couple of questions. Unfortunately, I skipped the beginning of this conversation, which might be related. Yeah, my question is, would that be a crazy idea to put the tab contents into the view pager? The reason why I'm asking that, we could have a history in the tabs. We could hold it, and also we could have a nice transition between tabs. So, I don't know.
I'm not sure I understand completely the question.
So at the moment we got.
I think it's a suggestion rather than a question.
Okay.
Because I think that the question is whether yes, we can do that. and it's a good thing. Like having history when you are switching between tabs. It's good.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I just understood what the suggestion was. So maybe
Yeah, me neither. So yeah, if you can please.
maybe you can repeat.
Yeah, so at the moment we are holding the content in the fragment. My question is, can we set up a view pager which are holding, for example, if we have 3 tabs which holding three fragments, so we could have a history of the user journey and not reload the content every time we selecting the tab. So it would cut down the loading time, and also it would fix the issue with the history whenever user was scrolling down or not on the selected tab. Yes.
Anna, quick question. How is it set up at the moment? Isn't it each page containing a fragment itself?
So it's a fragment, and it's reloading the fragment every time you selecting the tab.
Isn't that because there is, I deal with this issue before, isn't that because there is 2 types of loading page, like view pagers, one which actually retains instances in which, I don't remember, there was something like that, there was one that the only thing with the other one, it consumes more memory because you have more fragments on the stack at the moment. So it consumes a bit more memory, but that was possible just by changing the pager type, right, or something like that.
Yeah,
on iOS, basically it keeps all of them in the memory and then just switches them, removes them, and adds them back to the view. But again, it's Android, it's not iOS.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
are very limited in terms of runtime memory. We cannot hold 5-6 fragments in the memory. It will crash the app in the second level navigation.
Yes, Ruben, of course. But with the view pager, you can limit the number of pages you are holding at the moment, as well as we can jump into recyclers views, which will put down the memory if we are not scrolling down. It's like just a suggestion with the maybe future implementation, because obviously not for now.
It's actually quite nice.
But if we switch from first page to third one, so we didn't solve anything, it will still reload it.
Yeah, so everything depends on how many pages you can keep in a memory. You got a property for the view pager, which says I'm keeping 3 pages in a memory. So for all the apps which are having 3 tabs, it will be holded everything in a memory. If that makes sense.
It makes to me, because I know what you're talking about, but I don't know whether everybody has this context.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It's just holding them in memory through the view pager or not. I've seen that before. I don't know.
So the idea came from the standard tab bar navigation, which is now allowed on the Android. You can have a bottom bar on the Android at the moment, and it is using the view pager itself. So it's not my idea. It's the standard Android idea. So
I know the decision I've taken for this in the past, for example, is understanding like the usage of the tabs. Saying, okay, if we have a tab where, people are changing all the time between tabs, how big are the tabs, and, so you can more or less forecast, memory usage. In this case, as it's not, deterministic, because every app can be different, then I don't know. In my opinion, I have not a good answer, to be honest. I don't know what it would be the difference. And if, as you say, Ruben, maybe just be aware of the limit, memory limits, but nowadays Android phones also have better memory than used to do a few years ago. So
I think another question that needs to be asked: why it was built this way in the first place? I mean, it might be because of
this is relatively new. Actually, it's relatively new.
What?
It's not this way to build the tabs and the way to be able to navigate between them. It's something that is relatively new.
Okay.
When I got this task, when I got this task, I planned that it will take a week or maybe more, but like it took like 1 or 2 days, and like everything was in the API. It was pretty easy actually, and it looked better than iOS.
Okay. So the suggestion is to move to that implementation and see how it behaves. That's the idea?
Yeah, to implement it beautifully and intuitively. That's the idea. I like the idea. Just I think we should just give it a try and plan accordingly.
Yeah, maybe something you can do is put a hell of a long couple of lists and couple of sections and check the loading and then see how memory-wise it's behaving. And if it's behaving, in a reasonable size, then it's fine. So.
Yeah, the thing is that there are different apps, but like you would probably never have more than 5 tabs.
Yeah, no. I was just thinking like a worst case scenario, so just to check how it works in a worst case scenario, maybe. I don't know. It sounds like a good idea in my opinion, but and I've done it for other apps as well. And but I told you, like in the past, in those cases it was easier because it's really deterministic. And this one is a bit less, but you can just check, just to double check, that the memory-wise it doesn't spike, massively. But other than that, I think it's a good idea, at least in my opinion.
Okay, brilliant.
But
Thank you.
I want to understand just the source of your of this change, because basically you do it as part of the task to improve the loading time. Yeah, Atanas? No? In general?
No, not
because
at all.
what we can do, we can maybe cache the models that we are loading, and then when you switch tabs, it will just do the rendering and not load all the data source again. This one is...
These are unrelated. I agree with you, but these tasks are unrelated.
Cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think
It's not about
something was
improving
mentioned about the scroll. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying it's not about improving loading times. I think it's architecture. I think Anna noticed something that was not implemented the way she thought it should be, and she just asked if this needs to be changed.
Yeah, again, this is something new, relatively new. Like maybe how many years, Anna? Like a couple of years, maybe 3 years?
Maybe 2-3 years.
Okay. All right. I think it might be worth a shot, but the question is, in what context are we going to do this change? That's the question. As part of the Nova fixes, we can discuss this.
What do you mean, in our free time, Tsarfati?
Okay, cool. Sounds fascinating.
So
Now,
in general,
put it into context. That's all. Yeah.
So in general, I had a discussion with Bianca this morning about the things I could do, and it might be a good task for me to head into the code. I mean, if that one don't work, I will just not push it, but for me to understanding how the application, it's like a good task, and then it might be improving the other apps if that succeeds.
Sounds great, and that can be in conjunction with somebody actually reviewing the app structure with you, as we should do in one of the future sessions that is planned for you. So yeah, sounds good.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
All right, great. Who else? Hani, are you back? Okay, Atanas, you go.
Cool. Thank you, guys. So, like, I've been scratching my head and pulling my hair today, and like, I don't have a lot of hair left. So, So I remember we had a problem with the bottom bar, and like when you launch it in landscape mode, it was cutting something, and like on the 23rd of August, Elatkariti fixed it, and I tested it, and it worked. But now when we have to release, as usually is the case, it's broken, and like I couldn't get to the version because the fix is a combination of 3 different commits in 3 different repositories. And I couldn't make it I couldn't reproduce the fix. I couldn't get it back to a place where it was working. And I think I'm going crazy because I saw it. I remember that it was fixed, but now it's broken. and like I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. It's driving me crazy.
Can you repeat the problem again, please?
So I'm actually I can show it to you because it's.
Do you know which module is actually broken?
It is generic plus bottom tab bar and the root, like the. So it was happening with apps that had the bottom tab bar, but then the fix was in generic and also the bottom tab bar and the root. Some new method was added to the interface. So okay, so let me check. It only happens when auto rotate is on settings, like on the Android phone. So I'm gonna show this. I'm launching the app.
I have to just say that it happening only on Nexus devices.
Only on Nexus devices?
No, because like I had Nexus 4 and it worked for me. So this is why I think I'm losing my mind, because it worked. And
you
what
have a
Anna
Nokia
is saying,
there, so.
yeah, what Anna is saying is that she's saying that it may be happening only on certain devices, which may be the case. I don't know, but like I just want to get it back to a version that worked because I saw it working, and Elad is helping me on that because he did the fix, and he told me he was on a meeting with a client, but he told me the apps that he fixed it for. So I'm gonna try to reproduce it for these apps. They are Bellator and Hotplay. So I'm gonna check whether this was fixed, and then just try to see whether any app has it fixed at all.
If you reset back to the commit to the 23 of August, does it work for you?
No, I couldn't make it to work. The thing is that 3 commits. This fix has 3 commits in 3 different repositories. And I changed to these commits for the 3 different repositories, but like I was still getting the issue. That's the thing. And it is very difficult to go back in time to the exact configuration of repositories back then. And I'll just keep trying.
I don't know if you know, but this is the same issue that is currently crashing Android Oreo. I know it's not related to Android Oreo specifically, but the thing that Gil fixed for Android Oreo is that when you launch the app in landscape orientation, and the app is actually portrait orientation by default, it kind of messes up. So we looked at Pablo's code from back in the day with handling the orientation. It seems to be related at least to the way orientation is handled, because you opened it deliberately in landscape and then the app switched to portrait. That's the case, right? Yeah. So we have issues in that area. In Oreo specifically, it crashed. I don't know.
So from my investigation, it looked like on some devices like Nexus and your Nokia, it doesn't call on create second time. Yeah. So basically, we have to listen to the on orientation change, and there's a method which is written already, and it's called recreate. And when I call it on the orientation change, it actually fixed the issue. And that method is used nowhere else. Like it haven't been used anywhere in a code. So I don't know if that's someone just removed that code or like.
It's the exact same issue. The fix that Gil introduced to Android Oreo's issue with crashing, that the fact that our apps were not supported in Android Oreo, is the exact same code that I guess is causing your problem. I think there is a pending pull request, but it's been like 2 weeks that I've been waiting to hear the status of this task from Dror, and Dror has not appealed to not this one and not the previous Tech Talk. And he's the only one who knows the status of the task because Gil is on vacation, and the task was assigned to him. So I'm going to have to call Dror, but Atanas, maybe we should try to figure out if this is something that is in the works. And I can tell you maybe what Gil did, and you can try it just to apply the fixes for the orientation because it looks really the same thing. Something in the orientation, in the recreation of the activity, messes up the UI. That's what I think. That's my gut feeling.
I want to be able to get back to the fix of Elad Kariti and just verify that once upon a time this was fixed. Okay. And then the next thing, I want to see what broke it, because it's not very obvious. Like it's in several different places, and it's very difficult to track.
I know.
Can you just check for the 3 repositories to that specific commit for that specific day?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I switched to these repositories, but there's also Zap Android. There's also well, the SDK is fine, like it's linked, and like I couldn't make it work. I couldn't make it work, even when I switched to these exact commits that were. And because there was misalignment of all the repositories, like I had to comment out code and crazy things like that, and like some structure of the project was changed, so it stopped finding certain modules that aren't needed anyway, but like they're just there, tightly coupled to the SDK. So like it wasn't fun, and it's still not fun, but like I'm gonna keep working on that.
It's interesting to see though if Kariti's fix from back in the day was related also to the orientation, because now we're addressing the exact same issue with that Oreo crashes. So I don't know if it's a regression or whatever. I will speak to Dror directly after this talk to understand where the stats stand, but it's worth to understand that we have issues with launching our portrait apps in landscape orientation. When the phone is held in landscape orientation, it causes issues because the app is not built currently to being rotated when it launches. That's the idea.
By the way, Anna has the fix. It's there, waiting to be approved and merged. It is just that our project, like Quasi, they want to release, and like it just can't wait for the next SDK.
Okay. All right. Who else? Hani? No, Hani's not here anymore. Okay, we're not going to get an update from Hani this week. Arav, do you have something to update?
Do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, but you probably can talk about it better than I can. What I can say is that, I don't remember if I updated, but even if I did, most of the people didn't attend what I did, so let's try again. We had an issue with updating our apps from HockeyUp, from one debug version to another. I raised this issue and I was wondering if anybody understood what it was. Then we figured out it was related to the fact that when a new build is created, a different debug key store is used. Every time a build is running, a new instance of Circle CI or whatever is created with a new debug key store. And so you cannot update one debug version to the next debug version automatically via HockeyUp. That was the problem that we raised, and I discussed it with Ran, and I've put a ticket on the Zap team board to make sure that when we run debug builds, we use always the same debug key store, just as it is done in the release key store. Ran acknowledged it, and then it will be fixed at some point so that we can actually use the update feature of HockeyUp from debug key store. That's the update on that. Another update related to HockeyUp. We are currently using HockeyUp SDK version 3.5, and it has an issue, again, with updating. Okay. We need to update the version from 3.5 to 3.6, so we'll do that sometime soon. I also discussed it with Ran, but he said we can go ahead and do it. There's something with
3.6 is not the newest. 0.7.
Okay. We need at least. עלית עכשיו